Start your coffee maker or your pot of tea, we have a lot of news for you today. Greetings from me, you're watching RomWrom, the channel sharing the joy of sim racing and a regular news roundup, a weekly sim racing news. My name is Serta and I will be your host for this video. Invariably, when we skip 1 week of news, the next week is packed full. This time for most every sim and even some hardware news. And yes, this is once again one of these videos you can make a coffee or tea and empty your cup before the news video is finished. But we don't want to let you without important news, do we? Our over 17,000 subscribers need their news. And by the way, can we get to the 20,000? Come on, hit that subscribe button. And yes, Reza is up to their classic shenanigans, releasing on Saturday evenings, which is too short a time frame for us to put it in a Sunday video. So you're getting the info today instead of last week. Let's get to it. Kunos dropped ACEvo 0.8 on Thursday and it's as packed as a Reza update. 3 new cars join the roster. The KTM Crossbow GT2, which the patch notes call a car of brutal directness that distills KTM's stripped-back philosophy, which is a lot of words to say it's a bitch to drive because the motor is too strong for the chassis. Its sibling, the Crossbow GT4, uses the same DNA in a friendlier package built to GT4 rules, meant as an easier entry point into structured racing. Then there's the Volkswagen Golf 8R, an all-wheel drive performance version that sits next to the existing Golf 8 GTI. The notes describe it as the understated rocket of the lineup, with a line about how real pace doesn't always announce itself. That's classic marketing bullshit. The actual substance is simple. It's a fast, everyday, all-weather Golf. Kyalami joins the tracklist in its modern FIA layout. It sits at high altitude near Johannesburg, and the thinner air actually affects engine output and aero load, which is a nice bit of real simulation detail. The next one is a real step forward, not just marketing talk. Community-made cars previously limited to single player can now be used in multiplayer. Servers verify content with SHA checks, so modified or mismatched car files get rejected before they hit the grid. There's also a new entry list tool for league organizers to set static order. On top of that, external livery creation is now supported, opening the door for the community to skin these cars outside the base sim tools. Kunos and 505 Games do note they don't take responsibility for community content that breaks trademarks or platform rules. Meh. Standard disclaimer stuff. This update calls itself the biggest VR update of the early access cycle so far, and honestly, looking at the list, that claim holds up, but it was much needed. The headline feature is foveated rendering, included an eye-tracked version on supported headsets, which focuses rendering power where you're actually looking to save performance without losing sharpness. Alongside that, a pixel density slider, a world-scale option, super sampling, and a custom anti-aliasing pass built specifically for VR. VR settings are now separate from the flat screen settings, so tuning one doesn't mess with the other. There's also a mode that favors frame rate over latency, and the renderer now writes directly into the VR display pipeline to cut out extra overhead. There's a ton of additional VR features, we won't go into full detail here, and VR settings have been added to the UI, though non-VR settings are still pending. The rendering engine gets a memory management pass with texture and mesh pools that resize dynamically to stay within your GPU's VRAM budget. There's better VRAM usage reporting too. A broad round of optimizations touches particles, clouds, material heaps, and shadow maps. Projection correction has also been added. Visually, windshields look better in the rain now, with new wiper refraction and raindrop splash effects. A fix for trees flickering at the edges of the draw distance, tree popping in cockpit view, and a mirror rendering bug on the ultra graphics setting are all resolved, along with recurring crashes on the 9070 XT and RX 7600. Cloud levels have also been remapped and the wet tarmac shader realigned, so the visuals line up properly with the reworked physics underneath. The road temperature model was reworked and the track grip maps were rebaked using the new logic, though the studio says calibration is still ongoing. Camber is now calculated geometrically, brake temperatures respond properly to electronic braking systems, and rear wheel steering has been corrected, which I suppose will be for the Porsche 911 GT3 RS 992 and the Audi R8 LMS GT3 Evo 2. Smaller fixes include toning down excessive smoke and adjusting how wet grass particles behave. Ref limiter choking has been removed, telemetry labs are enabled in the Datsun's default setup, DCT gained a minimum filter throttle cut, and launch control has been restored on the Ferrari Daytona SP3. Hot stint timing, results and lap counting are all fixed, along with a fuel bug where exceeding tank capacity during a pit stop was still affecting stop time. Pop-up headlights are now synced correctly. Multiplayer stability was improved, several crash causes are fixed covering joining a server, failed connections, switching sessions mid-load and a startup edge case. A freeze caused by spamming inputs while joining is gone, admin commands now give proper feedback in chat. Players can't pause the sim anymore while driving online, that's a good one, and cars no longer take damage when multiple players spawn on the same grid box. On the audio side, a filter fix removes a false bottoming out sound during collisions, and the Ferrari Daytona SP3 gets updated gearbox sound. Race cars now also carry plain liveries by default, with the material setup needed to support that external livery creation mentioned earlier. In the UI, there's a new number plate selector in the paint shop with a proper character limit and updated localization, and Kunos fixed a FreeCam widget bug. Under the hood, several crashes are fixed too, including one tied to changing car setup mid-session and another from launching the game off a network drive. I wouldn't do that on principle, but you do you, of course. Plus a brief empty showroom screen that used to show before the splash screens is gone. Protection for controls listening during session changes or restarts has also been added. We skipped a lot of very deep technical information, so if you want to go down that rabbit hole, check the link in the description of the video. Ascher Racing released a standalone firmware updater for the Artura wheel, bringing it to firmware version 2.0 and installing a brand new bootloader. It runs on Windows 10 or 11 and needs no additional software. Important heads up before you jump in, the update wipes all your personal device settings, rotary switch modes, custom clutch curves, everything resets to defaults. They say this is a one-time occurrence and won't happen with future updates. So screenshot your settings in the SimHub plugin beforehand, close SimHub and connect the wheel using the included coiled cable, which is mandatory for this particular update. The big change is the new Ascher Racing bootloader version 1.0, which replaces the STM32 standard bootloader. They say it was developed entirely from the ground up. First, future updates become software triggered. No more unplugging the cable, holding a button, unplugging back in to enter DFU mode. That manual dance is required one last time for this update, but after that, the whole process handles itself automatically. Second, future updates can go through the rear USB-C port with an active quick release that has USB pass-through, so the coiled cable won't be needed anymore. Third, LED animations show you the update progress through stages like connecting, flashing, and done, usually wrapping up in a few seconds. Fourth, it runs at the same clock speed as the main application, making it much faster than the old bootloader. And fifth, it communicates exclusively over USB, which they describe as considerably more reliable and faster. On the firmware side, version 2.0 adds built-in communication with the new bootloader, so updates can be triggered in software, exposes additional device info like the bootloader version number, and includes minor stability fixes access for default lighting on startup. One compatibility note worth knowing: once you install the Ascher Racing bootloader, you can't cleanly downgrade below firmware version 2.0. They emphasize that firmware changes cannot permanently damage the device, which is reassuring, but reverting below version 2.0 would require a manual recovery procedure. If you ever need to do that, contact their support and they'll walk you through it. After updating, reopen the SimHub plugin and reconfigure your device before your next session. And if anything goes wrong that rerunning the updater doesn't fix, they recommend to reach out to Ascher Racing support before trying any manual recovery yourself. Let's run through Wreckfest 2's content update number 8. 2 new cars join the roster. The Bullet is an American rear-wheel drive from the 60s and the Jackal covers the 80s. On the track side, we're getting new waypoint race routes for Scrapyard and Savolax Sandpit. A pair of new waypoint modes arrive too: Random Waypoint and Free Order. The developers note that NPCs can't handle the random order, so those modes won't work in single player. Several new suicide race routes pop up across Speedway Oval, Speedway Figure 8, UK Banger Dirt Oval, UK Banger Figure 8, and Savolax Sandpit Short Circuit. A new set of challenge events rounds out the content drops. Player progress gets its first iteration with a badge system you can level up based on your playstyle. Normal damage intensity has been dialed back. Drifting and airtime now generate score events. The developers describe the new scoring as fairer. You can now score as a defender as long as you deal damage. The wrong way indicator was falsely triggering on the Speedway Figure 8 track, and that's been fixed. Leaderboards now have separate class-based boards alongside the existing ones. The tuning system gets a substantial overhaul. A new quick tune mode lets you adjust any tuning part with a single slider, which is a welcome shortcut for anyone who doesn't want to fiddle with dozens of individual values. You can download other players' shared tunes straight from the leaderboards. Each tuning modifier now has a help description. The tuning screen shows simulated performance stats, and correct metric and imperial units are being used for all values. On the vehicle front, the Hava Crusader got buffed to reduce that heavy tail end feeling. Missing clutch upgrades were added for the Stahlwagen, Vulcan, and Hava Crusader. The school bus engine has been revised to be a properly turbocharged diesel, which is a fun detail. The tachometer now behaves like an authentic lazy analog unit. Another nice touch. NPC cars weren't dodging properly in multiplayer. That's been sorted. The Crabbit livery editor has a stack of updates. You can share designs with other players, but the current method involves exchanging loose files from your save game folder. The developers know that sharing will be made more convenient later. They describe adding a massive amount of new stickers, sprayed on text, and banger-style number decals. New tools include a skew function for skewing individual decals and a fine-tuned toggle for precision adjustments. You can reorder decals and decal groups through the options menu. Gamepad users can press the left stick to pan and zoom. Decal placement for add, copy, paste, and mirror operations has been made more reliable, and there are general usability improvements to smooth out the editing experience. Interface additions include a toggleable minimap with adjustable zoom, a compass toggle, and a small checkered flag that appears on the car tag of finished racers. UI improvements hit the tuning, Crabbit, challenge select, and loading screens, with assorted other tweaks sprinkled throughout. Online play sees what they call more robust client synchronization, improving multiplayer collisions. Client prediction accuracy is better. Cars in the post-race screen no longer show up smoking and on fire, which must have been a strange one to encounter. Quitting a lobby now returns you to the server browser if you originally joined through direct connection. Force feedback, which has always been surprisingly good in Wreckfest, gets the deepest set of changes in this update. Update frequency is higher, and new road detail, engine, gearbox, and road noise effects have been folded into the force feedback signal. Jitter is reduced. A new vibration intensity setting controls road detail and effects. Dynamic damping range jumped from 100 to 200%, with the old 40% default remapped to 100%. Damping logic was improved to reduce center oscillation while better conveying steering rack friction. The low force boost logic was rewritten for gear and belt-driven wheels to saturate the signal more effectively, delivering closer to full cornering effort more often. Wheels and controllers with up to 128 buttons, wow, now work, fixing a previous 32 button limit. A range of controller binding issues were also resolved. System-level improvements include the standard stability and performance line, which tells you roughly what you'd expect and nothing more. The replay system now writes in smaller chunks, which fixes a frame hitch when crossing the finish line. Collision systems performance got a minor optimization by spreading deformation calculations across worker threads. Audio wraps things up with a mix of fixes and additions. Missing ground and rock wall collision sounds in the desert waypoint race are back. The checkpoint sound effects wasn't playing in online multiplayer waypoint races, and that's been corrected. Ground collision sounds were added for the driver ragdoll, along with tire impact sounds for wooden ramps and tire contact sounds for metal crosshatch surfaces. Track-specific audio content banks are now supported. On the memory front, large audio assets are now streamed from disk rather than loaded into memory, and sounds for animated track objects like cranes load only when one is actually present on a track. The school bus turbocharger has matching audio now to go with the engine revision. The waypoint race checkpoint sound moved from the UI volume group to other effects, and a cockpit view mixing issue that was muffling exhaust backfire has been fixed. The Project Motor Racing team released their latest AMA on July 10th, and while the stream itself had audio issues and Discord freezes, they still got some interesting information out. 3 DLC packs are confirmed for the year. The GT70s pack is already out now. The V8 Power Pack and Volt Endurance Pack are coming soon, but exact dates remain vague. Feature-wise, photo mode technically exists in the sim already, but the devs say it's missing functionality they want, so it's on the back burner with no timeline given. Join in Progress multiplayer is aiming for the mid-July patch, though they were careful to say that could slip if testing isn't finished in time. Personally, I prefer good over fast, so let the testers do their thing. No worries. Multiclass racing is planned for both ranked and career modes eventually, but there's no date attached to that either. Related to that, they're still blocked on third-party integrations like LFM or SimGrid because the APIs needed for that don't exist yet. Collision physics will get a major overhaul. Developers claim they are better than ever based on internal checks. Well, I sure hope so, because why release physics that are worse than before, eh? They promise no clipping or ghosting hits. Tutorial guides for mods are delayed due to external trials. On the car development side, GT4 cars are getting a rework with functional brake ducts and improved tire wear, and flat spot modeling is planned but not enabled yet. Gamepad support is also getting attention, with the goal being to match difficulty between wheel and controller rather than making pad easier. They also shared that one of their environment artists, Thomas, built 2 entire modded tracks, High Rock and the unreleased Apex Nova, largely in his own free time. Speaking about mods, this week they released the so-called PMR Test Center to ModHub. The Test Center is a test track they use to test cars before during development and will for sure be useful for mod makers. And yes, what you are seeing right now are official images of it released by Straight4. Other odds and ends. There's a known replay bug on PC where opponents vanish, with a temporary workaround suggested, but no confirmed fix yet. HUD widgets can already be moved around, and scaling options are being considered for the future. Achievements are getting expanded too, with ideas floating around like rewarding players for beating developer lap times, though that's very much still just an idea at this stage. NPC improvements are also on the roadmap, including personalities and rivalries for opponents, but again, no concrete timeline was given. On the driving side, the tip for the new vintage DLC cars is to start braking early, like 300 meters out, since these things have serious top speed, but not much actual grip. They also explained why patches take longer to release than hotfixes. Full patches need sign-off from Microsoft and Sony, plus their QA, because of the console support, while hotfixes skip a lot of that process. Lemma Ultimate have teased a US track pass, for now only showing Daytona and Laguna Seca, promising 6 tracks in 3 packs. No pricing and no date announced though. Fanatec users using the CSL-DD and GT-DD Pro wheelbases may have encountered an issue where the bases turned themselves off in the middle of racing. According to Fanatec, this was caused by an update of the firmware that resulted in spikes so that the power unit would react to it turning it off. The issue has been resolved in the latest firmware for most users, but Fanatec ask any users still encountering the problem to report the issue as a bug, as they know they haven't caught them all. And speaking of Fanatec, they've announced a partnership with Nissan to develop officially licensed sim racing steering wheels. While all these licensed thingies don't interest me personally, let me know in the comments what you think of such deals. Do you buy products officially licensed by a company or an organization like the FIA or something? RaceRoom is having the yearly summer sale until August 3rd with 50% off individual cars and tracks and the touring car pack. You may or may not know that SCS are working on coaches for Euro Truck Simulator 2 and have released a video of an MAN coach being driven, as well as some exterior shots of it, which is what you are seeing and hearing right now. The coaches will be released in an extra DLC for which no release date and no price have been announced. RENNSPORT dropped hotfix 1.2.12, small patch, some practical fixes. On the audio side, they rebalanced the DTM intake sound between the hood and reverse exterior cameras and bumped up the engine volume in the exterior hood view so the exhaust note doesn't get drowned out by intake noise. They call it visceral and authentic, which is a generous way of saying they turned some sliders until it sounded less weird. For vehicles, the Peugeot 9X8 gets its steering wheel LED ref lights back. The Mercedes 190e Evo 2 had a missing RPM needle on consoles, now fixed, and the light flare config was corrected for better night visibility. Default setups were also added for the HWA Evo R and BMW M3 E30, which presumably should have been there already. Thermalito had an issue where NPC cars would lose it coming out of the pits. That's fixed. Hockenheim Classic Revival got a maintenance pass that reinstated collision physics at the pit building, fixed some texture mapping, and brought back missing trackside objects like brake markers and balloons. Yes, balloons. In the UI, several Mercedes CLK LM liveries were invisible in the store and are now purchasable. The main menu had a bug where the background was just looping a static image instead of playing the intended animation. Both fixed. They closed by acknowledging more issues remain, including crashes, and say they're working on it. Fair enough. Here we are with our monthly view of how our hobby is doing. The word of the month, June, might well be sideways. The overall user numbers are kinda like in May, but 4,000 more than last year, and that was 4,000 more than the year before. Most sims don't register big ups or downs, just standard deviations, although AC dropped about 250 daily users, Race from about 100, as did AC Rally, but the most surprising thing is Wreckfest 1 climbing to 760 daily average users, up from 245 in May. Was there some party going on? I mean, it surpassed Wreckfest 2 every month, but this is strange. And we checked the data twice. It's still climbing in usage, by the way. Automobilista 2 pushed out version 1699 last Saturday evening, and there's a lot packed into this one. New cars, better NPCs, nicer wet weather visuals, and the usual pile of physics tweaks. A quick follow-up patch, 16991, landed shortly after to clean up a few loose ends, so we'll fold those changes in as we go. Let's break it down. The headline content is the Historical Endurance Pack Part 2. It adds a batch of mid-2000s GT cars. The Lister Storm GTM and Saleen S7R join the GT1 2005 class. The Spyker C8 GT2R, Panos Esperante GTLM, and TVR T400R round out a new GT2 class. The Gillette Vertigo Strife joins GTR 2004, and the Maserati Grand Sport joins the Trofeo class. There's also a free car for everyone, the Milano 55 GT1. Worth noting, these new 2004-2005 GT cars were meant to be DLC exclusive from the start, and the follow-up patch corrected an issue that had them more widely accessible than intended. The Milano 55 GT remains free content as planned. As you may know, there's once again a huge ongoing project to revise the physics for every car class in the sim, and the goal is to have it all wrapped up by version 1.7 sometime in Q3 of this year, but we're talking Reza time here, so treat that milestone with a lot more than a pinch of salt. A soft target rather than a promise. The good news is the list of classes with full or advanced revisions is massive at this point. Pretty much all the prototypes, GT classes, most of the open wheelers, and a long list of touring and stock car classes are already there. A smaller group is still waiting on full attention, including GT Classics, the TC Vintage Car, Rallycross, the old Opala and Omega stock cars, and the truck classes. One line in the patch notes is worth a laugh. It says the finished classes are far along enough to... and then just stops. Cut off mid-sentence. Either a copy-paste error or someone got interrupted, but either way it's a nice reminder these patch notes are written by actual humans on a deadline and not some stupid LLM. This is a really useful new feature. The NPCs can now branch off the main rubbered racing line in the wet and use the grippier part of the track instead. Since these lines have to be built by hand for each circuit, they're rolling out gradually. Right now, about 20 tracks have them, including several versions of Barcelona, Imola, Interlagos and Spa, plus Monza 2005 and the Hungaroring. The follow-up patch added a few more to that list too: Road Atlanta 2005, Le Mans 2005 and Le Mans Bugatti. More will be added on the way to version 1.7. Alongside the NPC wetlines, there's a matching visual pass on wet and changing weather conditions with lighting, shader and texture tweaks. They also adjusted the spray particle opacity from diffusers and wheels so they look more consistent with each other. Back to the NPCs. There's new multi-stint fuel strategy logic for timed races, along with more tweaks to overtaking aggression, braking behavior and lateral movement when cars are fighting for position. NPCs also now attempt defensive moves on the first lap, and there are further aero setup adjustments for high-speed tracks. The follow-up patch kept nudging this along too, with further small adjustments to NPC pit stop decision-making on fuel and tires, plus more tweaks to overtaking and lateral behavior specifically for GT classes. Throttle application in the wet and on straights was also reduced for Formula, GT and prototype cars with traction control, and the Gillette Vertigo Strife got its own dedicated NPC calibration pass. Now some, let's call it smaller stuff. On the UI side, Indianapolis 2005 RC was mislabeled as an oval in the German localization. There was also a bug showing incorrect qualifying rules when setting up a multiplayer lobby from the Sims client, which has since been sorted. Physics-wise and beyond the ongoing version 1.7 revisions, the fuel tank position was corrected for the F Classics, F High-Techs and the 2005 era GT and LMP cars. The McLaren MP412 also picked up a missing intermediate tire option in its setup, and a separate physics glitch on its HD variant was fixed in the follow-up patch. That patch also added a default intermediate tire option for the LMP and GT 2005 classes, slightly reduced cold tire effects for GT1, GT1 2005, GT2 2005, GTR 2004, and LMP 1 and 2 2005, and made minor adjustments to GT and prototype wet tire behavior. Individually, the Spiker C8 GT2R got a slightly lower center of gravity and a tweaked default differential setup, while the Gillette Vertigo had its rev limiter corrected to 7,200 RPM, a lowered center of gravity, and a small bump to rear wing downforce. Audio got a few fixes too. The puddle splash sounds were adjusted, some occasional artifacts with small and medium crowds are gone, and stiffly sprung cars no longer make weird noises when viewed in external replay cameras. The Milano GT55 also had its internal engine sound volume adjusted in the follow-up patch. A few vehicle-specific fixes rounded things out as well. Damaged models and collisions were corrected for the Panos Esperante GTLM, Lister Storm GTM, Gillette Vertigo Strive, and TVR Tuscan T400R. The Spiker C8 Spider GT2R had its driver animations, cockpit camera view, and a flickering windscreen banner fixed. The Vertigo Strive's shift lights were updated, and the Saleen S7R GT1 picked up new RPM LEDs, rear wing badges, a corrected steering wheel pivot point, and a fixed right-hand mirror mapping issue. Last but not least, Barcelona had a small gap in the terrain that's now patched up. Overall, it's a solid update. The real substance here is the wetline NPC and the steady march toward finished version 1.7 physics. Our steady march toward 20,000 subscribers would be much helped by you. Yes, you. Come on, you've watched so many of our videos already. Time to subscribe.